The story of Nomura. The rise, fall, and reinvention of Japan financial giant. In 1998, a catastrophic moment unfolded inside Nomura Securities headquarters in Tokyo. The firm that had once dominated Asian finance was on its knees. Scandals had decimated its reputation. Profits had evaporated. Senior executives were resigning in disgrace. Regulators were circling. And yet, 25 years later, Nomura would still be standing. Not just surviving, but thriving as one of Asia's most important financial institutions. This is the story of how institutional resilience, cultural adaptation, and strategic reinvention allowed one firm to weather storms that would have destroyed its competitors. It's a story about the unique challenges of building a global investment powerhouse from Japan, about the collision between Eastern and Western business cultures, and about what it takes to rebuild trust after devastating failures. Nomura's story begins in 1925, in the aftermath of the Great Kanto earthquake that devastated Tokyo. Japan was rebuilding, and a young entrepreneur named Tokushichi Nomura saw an opportunity. He had been running a money-changing business in Osaka, but he understood that Japan modernization would require sophisticated capital markets. While others saw rubble and destruction, Nomura saw the foundation for a new financial system. He established Nomura Securities with a radical vision for the time. He believed that ordinary Japanese citizens should have access to stock investing, not just wealthy elites and zaibatsu conglomerates. This democratization thesis would define the firm for decades. Tokushichi Nomura brought more than capital to this venture. He brought a philosophy rooted in Osaka merchant culture, which prized pragmatism, customer service, and long-term relationships over short-term profits. He recruited aggressively from universities, building a sales force that could educate retail investors about the stock market. The firm's early culture emphasized discipline, hard work, and an almost missionary zeal about spreading equity ownership. Nomura opened branch offices across Japan, closer to ordinary people than traditional banks dared to venture. By 1930, the firm had established itself as Japan's leading retail brokerage, with a network that competitors couldn't match. The firm's first major test came with World War II and its aftermath. Like all Japanese financial institutions, Nomura was devastated by the war. Its network was destroyed. Its capital was wiped out. American occupation authorities dissolved the zaibatsu and restructured Japan's entire financial system. But Nomura had one crucial advantage. Its retail focus and decentralized branch network had created relationships with thousands of ordinary Japanese families. When the economy began recovering in the 1950s, Nomura was positioned perfectly to channel household savings into the stock market. While competitors scrambled to rebuild, Nomura already had the distribution network in place. The 1960s brought Nomura's first era of international expansion. Setsuya Tabuchi, who became president in 1968, recognized that Japan's economic miracle was creating globally competitive companies that would need international capital. He opened Nomura's first overseas office in New York in 1960, followed by London in 1964. These weren't just symbolic gestures. Tabuchi was building the infrastructure for Nomura to become the bridge between Japanese capital and global markets. The firm began underwriting bonds for Japanese companies in international markets, pioneering what would become a massive business. By 1970, Nomura was the world's largest securities firm by capital, larger than Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs. But Nomura's secret advantage wasn't just size. It was the firm's unique hybrid model. In Japan, Nomura dominated retail brokerage, giving it stable fee income and massive capital. This subsidized its international expansion and allowed it to take risks that pure-play investment banks couldn't afford. The firm developed sophisticated research capabilities, hiring economists and analysts who could guide both retail clients and institutional investors. Nomura Research Department became legendary, producing detailed reports on Japanese industries that Western investors desperately needed. This research was both a service and a sales tool, cementing relationships and generating trading commissions. The 1980s represented Nomura's golden age. Japan's asset bubble was inflating dramatically. Stock prices were soaring. Real estate values were exploding. And Nomura was at the center of it all. The firm retail network was channeling billions from Japanese households into equities. Its institutional business was helping Japanese companies raise capital globally. Its trading desks were making enormous profits from the one-way market. By 1987, Nomura market capitalization exceeded $15 billion, making it the world's most valuable financial institution. The firm employed over 10,000 people globally and had offices in 30 countries. During this era, Nomura made several signature investments that demonstrated both its strengths and its emerging vulnerabilities. The firm took a 20% stake in Wasserstein Perella, the boutique investment bank founded by two legendary dealmakers from First Boston. This investment, made in 1988 for $100 million, was meant to give Nomura expertise in mergers and acquisitions, a business where it lacked credibility with Western clients. The partnership was culturally awkward from the start. Bruce Wasserstein and Joseph Perella were aggressive, ego-driven dealmakers. Nomura executives were consensus-oriented and risk-averse. The firms never truly integrated, and Nomura eventually sold its stake at a modest profit. But the investment revealed something important about Nomura's strategy. The firm recognized its weaknesses and was willing to pay for capabilities it couldn't build organically. Another major move came in 1990 when Nomura invested heavily in building a European equity business. The firm hired dozens of salespeople and traders from Western competitors, paying top dollar for talent. It established major trading operations in London, Paris, and Frankfurt. The thesis was straightforward. European institutional investors needed access to Japanese equities, and Japanese institutions wanted European exposure. Nomura could serve both sides. For a few years, this business thrived. Nomura became the leading broker of Japanese stocks to European clients, earning substantial commissions. But the firm struggled to build credibility in European equities, where local competitors had overwhelming advantages in relationships and research. Then came 1991, and everything changed. Japan asset bubble burst spectacularly. The Nikkei stock average, which had peaked above 38,000 at the end of 1989, began a sickening decline. Real estate values collapsed. Banks revealed massive loan losses. And Nomura faced a crisis that would test everything the firm had built over 6 decades. The retail business, which had been so profitable during the bubble, turned into a nightmare. Ordinary Japanese investors had lost fortunes, and many blamed their brokers. Trading volumes collapsed as investors fled the market. Nomura profits evaporated, and the firm reported its first loss since World War II. But the real catastrophe was still ahead. In 1991, Japanese prosecutors revealed that Nomura had been involved in a massive scandal. The firm had compensated favored corporate clients for trading losses, a practice that was technically legal but ethically indefensible. Even worse, some of these clients had connections to organized crime. The revelations were devastating. Nomura president and chairman resigned. The firm was suspended from underwriting government bonds, cutting off a crucial revenue source. Its reputation, built over 66 years, seemed irreparably damaged. Foreign investors who had trusted Nomura to help them navigate Japanese markets now questioned everything about the firm's integrity. The response to this crisis revealed Nomura's institutional character in ways that prosperity never could. The new leadership, led by President Hideo Sakamaki, implemented radical reforms. The firm established a compliance department with real authority, unprecedented in Japanese finance at the time. It created written policies prohibiting entertainment of corporate clients beyond minimal levels. Most importantly, it began a painful process of cultural change, trying to replace the relationship-driven, anything-for-the-client mentality with something more consistent with global ethical standards. These changes were resisted internally. Many veteran employees saw them as Western imports that would destroy what made Nomura successful. But leadership persisted, recognizing that without reform, the firm had no future. The 1990s became a decade of survival for Nomura. While American investment banks were thriving in a technology-driven bull market, Nomura was grinding through Japan's lost decade. The domestic equity business was moribund. Corporate finance activity was minimal as Japanese companies stopped raising capital. The firm's international operations, which had expanded so aggressively in the 80s, were now bleeding cash. Nomura closed offices, laid off employees, and retreated from businesses where it couldn't compete. The firm's market capitalization, which had peaked near $20 billion, fell below $3 billion. Competitors that had envied Nomura dominance now wondered if it would survive. Yet during these dark years, Nomura was quietly building capabilities that would matter later. The firm invested heavily in technology, recognizing that electronic trading would transform the brokerage business. It developed sophisticated risk management systems, learning from the losses that had nearly destroyed it. Most importantly, it began cultivating a new generation of leaders who understood global capital markets in ways their predecessors hadn't. These younger executives had worked overseas, spoke English fluently, and understood that Nomura needed to become a truly global firm, not just a Japanese firm with foreign offices. The early 2000s brought a glimmer of hope. Japan's economy began stabilizing. The Nikkei, while far below its bubble peak, stopped declining. More importantly, a new opportunity emerged. China was opening its capital markets, and Japanese financial institutions had geographic and cultural advantages in serving Chinese clients. Nomura moved aggressively, establishing a joint venture in China and hiring Mandarin-speaking bankers. The firm won mandates to advise Chinese state-owned enterprises on international fundraising. This China business would become increasingly important, generating both profits and strategic positioning. But Nomura's next transformation would come from an unexpected source. In September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, triggering a global financial crisis. Within weeks, Nomura made one of the boldest moves in its history. It acquired Lehman Asian and European operations for a combined $670 million, a fraction of what these businesses had been worth months earlier. The deal brought Nomura over 8,000 employees, including many of Lehman's top investment bankers and traders. It instantly gave Nomura capabilities in equities, fixed income, and investment banking that would have taken decades to build organically. The Lehman acquisition was a turning point, but not in the way many expected. Nomura suddenly had the talent and infrastructure to compete globally with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. The firm had Premier League investment bankers advising on multi-billion-dollar deals. It had sophisticated trading desks in every major market. It had the platform it had always wanted. But integrating Lehman culture with Nomura proved extraordinarily difficult. Lehman bankers were aggressive, highly compensated, and accustomed to entrepreneurial freedom. Nomura culture emphasized consensus, loyalty, and long-term employment. The clash was immediate and intense. In the years following the acquisition, Nomura struggled to make the math work. The Lehman bankers expected Wall Street-level compensation, while Nomura's pay structure was far more conservative. Many key hires departed after their retention packages expired, taking clients and relationships with them. The firm cycled through several executives running the international business, unable to find a leader who could bridge the cultural divide. By 2012, Nomura was reporting significant losses in its overseas operations. Critics argued the firm had overpaid for assets it couldn't effectively utilize, falling into the same trap that had ensnared Japanese companies during the bubble era. Yet Nomura persisted, and gradually, the integration began working. The firm leadership accepted that its international operations needed to run differently from its Japanese businesses. It created more autonomous management structures for overseas units. It adapted compensation to be more competitive with global standards. Most importantly, it stopped trying to make Lehman culture conform completely to Nomura. Instead, it allowed a hybrid culture to emerge, one that combined Nomura risk management and client service ethic with the aggressiveness and entrepreneurialism that Western investment banking requires. By 2015, the strategy was showing results. Nomura had become a major player in European equity underwriting, winning mandates from companies that historically worked only with American or European banks. Its Asian franchise, combining the inherited Lehman platform with its own traditional strengths, was generating consistent profits. The firm was advising on major cross-border deals, leveraging relationships in Japan, China, and Southeast Asia that Western competitors couldn't match. Nomura trading businesses had stabilized, with improved risk management preventing the kinds of losses that had plagued it in earlier years. The last decade has seen Nomura cement its position as a truly global firm, albeit one with a distinctive Japanese character. The firm has made several strategic investments that reveal its evolving strategy. In 2019, it acquired Green Tech Capital Advisors, a boutique focused on sustainable energy and technology. This acquisition signaled Nomura recognition that environmental and social governance would reshape capital markets. The firm established an ESG research team and began marketing itself to clients as a leader in sustainable finance. This positioning was particularly valuable in Europe, where ESG considerations were becoming central to investment decisions. Nomura has also invested heavily in wealth management, recognizing that Japan's aging population needs sophisticated retirement planning services. The firm established a private banking division serving high-net-worth individuals and family offices. It recruited relationship managers from Swiss banks and developed investment products specifically designed for Japanese clients with international assets. This business has grown steadily, generating stable fee income and deepening relationships with wealthy families who also control corporations that need investment banking services. Perhaps most significantly, Nomura has pioneered the use of data analytics and technology in the Japanese market. The firm established a digital innovation lab, hiring engineers and data scientists to develop trading algorithms and client service tools. It launched a robo-advisory service for retail investors, recognizing that younger Japanese clients expected digital interfaces. Nomura technology investments have created a competitive moat in the Japanese market, where many competitors remain technologically backward. The firm trading systems now handle millions of transactions daily with minimal human intervention, dramatically reducing costs. Throughout this evolution, Nomura has maintained certain core principles that trace back to its founding. The firm still believes in democratizing access to capital markets, now through digital tools rather than branch networks. It still emphasizes long-term client relationships over transaction revenues. It still sees itself as a bridge between Japanese capital and global opportunities. And it still maintains a culture of discipline and risk management that was painfully learned through decades of failures. These continuities have provided stability even as the firm's strategy has adapted to changing markets. The firm leadership transition over the past 2 decades reveals its approach to generational change. Unlike Western investment banks, which often bring in external CEOs, Nomura has promoted from within. Kentaro Okuda, who became CEO in 2020, spent his entire career at Nomura. He worked in the international business during its troubled years, led the wholesale division, and understands both the firm's Japanese roots and its global ambitions. This internal promotion pattern has advantages and disadvantages. It ensures cultural continuity and institutional knowledge. But it can also limit fresh thinking and reinforce established patterns. Nomura's current strategic position is complex. In its home market of Japan, the firm remains dominant in retail brokerage and is a leading player in investment banking. Its research coverage of Japanese companies is unmatched. Its distribution network reaches millions of households. However, the Japanese market itself is challenged by demographics, low growth, and regulatory constraints. Nomura has estimated that its domestic retail business will generate flat to declining revenues for the foreseeable future. The firm's future depends on its international operations, particularly in Asia, where it has unique advantages. In Asia outside Japan, Nomura has built a formidable franchise. It is a leading underwriter of equity and debt for Chinese, Korean, and Southeast Asian companies. Its research team covers hundreds of Asian companies, providing insights that European and American investors rely on. The firm trading desks are major liquidity providers in Asian equities and bonds. Most importantly, Nomura has relationships with Asian financial institutions, corporations, and governments that Western competitors envy. These relationships, built over decades, give Nomura access to deals and information that matter enormously in relationship-driven Asian markets. In Europe and the Americas, Nomura's position is more contested. The firm is a credible player in equity underwriting and trading, but remains outside the top tier dominated by Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan. In mergers and acquisitions advisory, Nomura wins mandates primarily when there is an Asian angle, such as a Japanese company acquiring a European business. The firm has struggled to build a major leveraged finance or high-yield business, areas where American competitors have overwhelming advantages. Nomura's strategy has been to focus on niches where it can compete, rather than trying to match bulge bracket firms across all products. The firm's financial performance over the past decade reflects these strategic realities. Nomura has generated modest but consistent profits, with return on equity typically in the mid-single digits. This profitability is far below peak years during Japan bubble, but it's sustainable and has satisfied investors. The firm market capitalization, currently around $6 billion, values it at a significant discount to book value. This suggests that investors remain skeptical about Nomura's ability to generate attractive returns long-term, particularly given the challenges in Japan and intense competition globally. Nomura faces several major challenges in the coming years. First, the firm must continue managing the cultural integration of its international operations. While progress has been made, tensions remain between Japanese and non-Japanese employees over compensation, decision-making authority, and career advancement. Second, Nomura needs to continue investing in technology while controlling costs, a difficult balance for any financial institution. Third, the firm must navigate increasingly complex regulatory requirements across multiple jurisdictions, each with different rules about capital, leverage, and conduct. Perhaps most fundamentally, Nomura must define what kind of firm it wants to be. Should it aspire to compete globally with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley across all products, or should it embrace a more focused strategy as the leading Asia specialist? The firm leadership has suggested the latter approach makes more sense, but there are voices internally and among shareholders pushing for broader ambitions. This strategic question remains unresolved and will shape Nomura's next chapter. The firm's competitive advantages have evolved over a century. In the early decades, Nomura's advantage was its retail distribution network in Japan, which gave it stable capital and market access. In the bubble years, its advantage was being Japanese when Japan dominated global capital flows. After the bubble burst, its advantage became survival itself, as many competitors disappeared. Today, Nomura's advantages are more subtle but still real. The firm has institutional knowledge about Asian markets that is difficult to replicate. It has relationships built over generations with Asian families, companies, and governments. It has a balanced business model with retail, wealth management, and wholesale operations providing diversification. Nomura has also developed a distinctive approach to risk management, learned through painful experience. The firm maintains conservative leverage ratios compared to Western competitors. It has strict limits on concentrated positions and counterparty exposure. Its compliance and control functions have real authority, able to stop transactions that present reputational risk. This conservatism sometimes costs Nomura business, as more aggressive competitors take risks the firm won't. But it has also allowed Nomura to survive crises that destroyed others. The firm culture today is a fascinating hybrid. In Japan, Nomura still operates much as it always has, with lifetime employment expectations, consensus decision-making, and deep client relationships. Overseas, particularly in London and New York, the culture is far more Western, with performance-based compensation, individual accountability, and transactional client relationships. This cultural duality creates tensions but also advantages. Nomura can operate effectively in relationship-driven Asian markets while also competing in transaction-driven Western markets. Few competitors can do both well. Looking at Nomura's impact on the investment industry, several contributions stand out. The firm pioneered the model of using retail capital to fund institutional ambitions, a strategy that American firms like Merrill Lynch later adopted. It demonstrated how relationship-driven business models could survive in increasingly transactional markets. It showed that non-Western financial institutions could compete globally, paving the way for Chinese, Korean, and other Asian firms. And it proved that firms could recover from devastating scandals if leadership was willing to make fundamental changes. The lessons from Nomura's century-long journey are profound for anyone building investment firms. First, geographic and market position matter enormously. Nomura thrived when Japan was rising and struggled when Japan stagnated. No amount of brilliant strategy can overcome being in the wrong market at the wrong time. Second, cultural adaptation is essential for global firms but also dangerous. Nomura attempts to become more Western cost it some of its distinctive advantages, while its failure to adapt quickly enough cost it opportunities. Finding the right balance is perpetually difficult. Third, reputation is fragile and invaluable. Nomura spent 60 years building trust, lost much of it in a single scandal, and has spent 30 years trying to fully restore it. In financial services, where trust is the product, reputational damage can be terminal. Fourth, diversification across geographies and business lines provides resilience. Nomura survived Japan lost decades partly because it had international operations. It survived the Lehman integration challenges partly because its domestic business remained stable. Fifth, leadership transitions are critical moments for institutional evolution. Nomura has successfully managed several generational transitions, maintaining continuity while allowing necessary change. For individual investors and students of markets, Nomura's story offers different lessons. The firm history illustrates how capital flows follow economic and political power. In the 1980s, capital flowed from Japan to the world. In the 2000s, it flowed from the West to Asia. Understanding these macro shifts is more important than picking individual securities. Nomura scandals demonstrate that conflicts of interest are inherent in financial intermediation. Firms serving both corporate issuers and investors will always face tensions between these clients. Investors should be skeptical and vigilant. The story also reveals the limits of size and scale in financial services. Nomura at its peak was the world's largest securities firm, yet this didn't prevent catastrophic mistakes or guarantee profitable growth. In professional services businesses, culture, talent, and reputation often matter more than balance sheet size. Finally, Nomura Century demonstrates the importance of institutional resilience and adaptability. Markets change, technologies evolve, regulations shift, and firms must evolve with them. The alternative is extinction. Today, as Nomura enters its second century, the firm faces a dramatically different world than Tokushichi Nomura encountered in 1925. Capital markets are global and electronic. Retail investing is being transformed by low-cost index funds and robo-advisors. Investment banking is increasingly concentrated among a few giant American firms. Asian capital markets are maturing and becoming more competitive. Climate change, technological disruption, and geopolitical tensions are reshaping industries. In this environment, Nomura's path forward is uncertain. Yet the firm has assets that shouldn't be underestimated. It has survived a world war, multiple financial crises, devastating scandals, and decades of economic stagnation. It has successfully integrated the largest acquisition in its history. It has built a global platform while maintaining its Japanese character. It has developed capabilities in technology, risk management, and wealth management that position it well for coming challenges. Most importantly, it has institutional knowledge and relationships in Asia that will be increasingly valuable as the region continues rising. The essential truth about Nomura is that it is a survivor. Not flashy, not revolutionary, but durable. In an industry where firms regularly disappear, where hubris and excessive risk-taking destroy centuries-old names, Nomura has endured. This endurance reflects conservative financial management, cultural emphasis on client relationships, and willingness to adapt when necessary. It also reflects advantages of geography and timing that cannot be replicated. Nomura was founded in the right place, Japan, at the right time, as the country was modernizing, and it has continuously found ways to leverage these origins. What can Nomura teach us about building institutions that outlast their founders? Several principles emerge from the firm history. First, ground the organization in values that are genuinely believed and consistently reinforced. Nomura's emphasis on client service and long-term relationships has persisted through a century because it is deeply embedded. Second, maintain financial conservatism that allows survival in bad times. Nomura's relatively low leverage and diversified revenue streams have provided resilience. Third, invest in generational continuity. Nomura internal promotion system ensures institutional knowledge is preserved even as leadership changes. Fourth, be willing to make painful changes when circumstances demand it. Nomura post-scandal reforms and its Lehman acquisition were wrenching but necessary. Organizations that can't adapt die. Fifth, understand your distinctive advantages and build strategy around them. Nomura has accepted it will never be Goldman Sachs, and has instead focused on being the leading Asia-focused global firm. This clarity has guided resource allocation and prevented wasteful attempts to be something the firm is not. Finally, maintain humility about what you don't know and what markets can do. Nomura's greatest mistakes came during periods of hubris, when the firm believed it had mastered markets or overcome competitive disadvantages. Its successes came when leadership maintained respect for market forces and competitors. This humility, paradoxically, requires confidence. Only secure organizations can admit uncertainty and vulnerability. As we close Nomura's story, we're left with questions about the future of global finance. Will Asian financial institutions ultimately dominate the 21st century the way American firms dominated the 20th? Will technology disrupt traditional investment banking and brokerage, or will relationships and trust remain central? Will financial firms become more global and homogeneous, or will regional specialists thrive? Nomura Evolution offers hints but no definitive answers. What's certain is that the firm will continue adapting, as it has for a century, finding ways to serve clients and generate returns in whatever market environment emerges. Thank you for joining this deep exploration of Nomura Securities. The firm journey from a small Osaka money changer to a global financial institution embodies both the possibilities and perils of building in finance. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. What other investment firms would you like us to explore? What lessons from Nomura history seem most relevant today? And subscribe to ensure you don't miss future deep dives into the institutions that shape global capital markets. Until next time, remember that in finance as in life, survival is success, and endurance reveals character.